Hello, everyone. Welcome to the network. Welcome to the Two Dads edition.
Wait, that's not it.
Start again. What's up, fat fucker?
Two Dads, Gen X edition. That's a great beginning.
What's up, fucker?
Hey, man, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. How are you? Welcome to Two Dads, Gen X edition.
Yeah, we're here again. This is our 8th episode.
Yeah.
And if you don't know us by now, again, I'm Dawson.
Yep. I'm James.
And we're here to talk about discipline.
Discipline, the thing I hated growing up and the thing that I had to do as a dad.
It's hard to do. You know, it really is hard to do that. You know, have the discipline to, you know, do what's right, to raise your kids right, and make them goods for society down the road.
Yeah, you want them to like you, but
yeah, you'll get into that. Hey, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Check us out on all major platforms for updates, reviews, and more.
And more.
And more.
Dawson,
let's Two Dads this shit.
Yeah.
There it is.
Still sounds like a 70s porno.
I know, it really does. Well, hey, let's open up this great conversation of discipline with talking about the 4 different types of parenting styles.
Yeah, there used to be just 3, but now there's 4.
Sadly, because society, and I think it's really mostly just in America.
Probably. Yeah, just
maybe third world countries.
Maybe. Well, no, I think they're probably all authoritarian over there.
Yeah, probably.
So, but that's one of them, authoritarian.
Yeah, and describe that.
Oh, okay. Well, authoritarian is like the drill sergeant dad. You know, you don't give at all. It's my way, the highway, that kind of thing. So most of us in Gen X, we grew up with that.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of times the mother would sometimes bring in the authoritative, right? Authoritative side of it.
I would say more permissive. So authoritative is like the balance, right? That's the one that's ideal. Authoritative has that authoritarian in it, so there's that strictness and that discipline, but there's also that permissiveness at times too. So that's kind of the ideal situation.
It's like you ground your kid, but then go in there like, hey, you know, I'm sorry I had to do this, but
yeah, but we're going to talk about why we're doing this, and you know, you're okay, and all that kind of stuff. Instead of just go to your room and then you don't talk to him for the next 3 days.
Yeah, which some kids like that. And then the permissive is
when you let your kids do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah. And then, but you're still there, kind of joining them, being their best friend, you know, hanging out.
That's the thing, is being their best friend is the priority.
Hey, honey, I haven't seen you in a week. Let's go spend $300 at the mall. Bullshit.
Or because you had to discipline, you're like, I feel bad now, so I want to make up for it because you don't like me right now, and so I want to make sure you like me still.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's permissive.
And then the new one that's really kind of gotten bad lately, and I think that's why we saw this woke take off is the neglectful.
How would you describe the neglectful one?
The neglectful, you can look at it 2 different ways, like the crackhead mom, crackhead dad, the alcoholic dad, you know, that comes home, passes out, drinks, and the kid just basically is taking care of the dad. It's almost reckless abandonment closely,
right.
Child neglect. And then you got like the mom that's so focused on meeting a guy and going out, and the kids left all the time, you know, to fend for themselves, and they're the ones that do the laundry and clean and pick up mom's vomit and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's why this generation coming up is the iPad generation. Yeah, because that is the babysitter, so that the parents don't have to deal with the kid.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these kids are having babies younger, and they're not taught how to do it because they didn't see it. Yeah. So if you didn't have a parent growing up, you know, I didn't have a dad growing up, so a lot of times, a lot of my male role models were people in the church and, you know, bosses, you know, that actually had good work ethic, and I kind of modeled myself to, like, I want to be like that, and where, you know, eventually I did get a good stepdad that actually helped my mom be a little more, less permissive and just a little more authority and stuff like that. So he was more of a partner for her. Yeah, and, you know, you had 10 kids, I mean, I had 4. And I was youngest.
I didn't have 10.
Well, I know you didn't have 10, but, you know, and so it was like seeing the pain that my mom suffered from the other 3. I was like, I'm going to be the good kid, but also push boundaries. So I was the one that's curfew's midnight. I'm like, well, Mom, but girls curfew's midnight too. Can mine be 12:30? Kind of thing. And I never broke it. Like if I made her a promise, I always did it. And I knew that
I broke promises all the
time. What was that one time you snuck out?
I didn't sneak out, but there were a lot of times like curfews and stuff where I didn't come home on time.
Yeah.
So it was always like midnight, and it might be. I mean, I didn't do it often, but every so often I'd come home at like 1:30, 2 o'clock. And the way my parents did it is they wouldn't sleep well unless they knew that their kids were home, and so you were supposed to go and just knock on the door and just say I'm home, all that kind of stuff. And when I would break curfew, the next day I'd get a lecture.
Just a lecture?
Yeah, my parents. So they didn't ground us, but they did withhold privileges.
Okay, yeah.
So just different term. But yeah, and so like they wanted us to understand. Well, I don't know about the rest of my siblings. I wasn't there for their lectures. Yeah. But yeah, they would just sit and they just talk to me. I learned how to, like when I was in the Army, I was really good at just standing at attention or parade rest while an NCO just cussed you out for something that you may or may not have done, but they're just venting, and that's kind of the culture. I was really good at just stone cold. My face was non-movable, and and then when they're done, it's like, right, you go on with your day.
Well, and I was that
came from the lectures.
I was the kid that always smiled, so I was always like. So
yeah, you can't do that to an NCO.
And my siblings were like, yeah, it was him. He did it. That's why he's laughing. I got so many ass whoopings for stuff. I am like, I don't even know what the hell's going on, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll take it, kind of thing, and it's just kind of funny.
So what kind of parent?
Well, I was going to tell you when I snuck out one time.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sneak out, go get Chandler. I'm pushing the car down the street and then start it down the street, kind of thing. And I go pick up Chandler, and then his girlfriend's there. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What are we doing? Like, oh, we want to go to the park. So I sat in the park waiting for them to make out and do their shit for 2.5 hours. And I'm like, I'm never fucking sneaking out again. I was like, so not worth it. And I was like, oh, whatever.
Yeah. It's not worth the risk.
And then I got grounded for, a week. Because, I came home at 5 a.m. And I should have been going to school, but kind of thing. Kind of my parents?
No, you.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think I was the good one. I mean, I was learning as I went, kind of thing. The one thing I really loved with Brenna, my only wife, and she and I always understood and respected the fact that if you start the discipline, you finish the discipline. If you put them in timeout, you're the one to go get them, kind of thing. So you could have the talk, hey, what did you do wrong? Kind of stuff, and what can we do differently next time? And then if I was too rough, or vice versa, she wasn't rough enough, I would never, all the time, I would never interrupt her or make her look bad in front of the kids, and vice versa. We always would come later and we would talk and, okay, what could we have done differently? Hey, you're a little too rough. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I'd go and apologize. Like Kira, right? Stuff like that. So I think it was pretty good. I mean, my kids were picking up after themselves, and they were respectful to other adults and environment, and
that's awesome.
I think they did good.
Oh, Dawson, you were a good dad.
I try to be, shit, man. One of those things. How about you?
Me? So I was probably the authoritative. Or the authoritarian, the first 10 years or so when my kids were younger, and especially while I was in the military. A lot of it had to do with how much stress I was under. So their mom for a couple of years was basically bedridden because of some genetic disorders that we're trying to figure out. And I was in the Army. I'd have to get up at 4:45 to go to PT at 6.
Yeah,
makes no sense. But those who have been in the military know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, you show up 15 minutes early for formation it's 15 minutes early to make sure you want to be on time, so you get it 15 minutes before that, but they have to make sure, Anyway, so, but I was going off of 4 or 5 hours of sleep most nights, and, trying to take care of a family of 5 kids, and a wife at the time who had, some significant health issues, and then I'm a soldier, and, all this other stuff. And so I was that disciplinarian, drill sergeant dad for a number of years.
What softened you?
The divorce, quite honestly. Well, and because it was a very challenging divorce in many ways, in a lot of ways. But when I got custody of my kids, when I finally had all of my kids, it was, I didn't want to be this asshole. I didn't want to be this prick that was just telling them what to do all the time.
Yeah.
And so I actually, and I changed a lot of what I did. But one of the things that I did was we all sat down and they made the rules. And so I literally had a family meeting, and I said, I don't want to be the one dictating to you guys how to live your lives all the time. You guys don't want me just yelling at you, so you make the rules. And you decide the consequences so that you have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And that direction actually made a huge, huge difference moving forward. There were still challenges, of course, but it was now no longer me dictating rules. It was, if they had a consequence or a punishment or whatever term you want to use for breaking a rule, it was like, hey, this is your rule.
Yeah, you made it.
Yeah, you made it, and you're the one that So my oldest daughter would lick her siblings.
What?
And it, of course, grossed them out, and then it'd be this big whole thing. And so one of the rules was you can't lick. But even with hitting, I never liked hitting. Yeah. I never promoted that kind of thing in my house. And so if one person hit the other person, whoever did the hitting had to serve them for a half hour. Laundry, pick up their broom, whatever. That's what they had to do for a half hour. If you lied about being hit, or were the antagonist that then got hit to get them in trouble, you had to serve the person for an hour.
Jeez.
So, and the kids were all on board with that because, great, I get to have my sister or my brother, do whatever. But yeah,
did you find your kids would egg on the other ones to try to get hit, and that's why you come up with that?
Yeah,
them on?
I have since found out that did happen. You're not there, you don't see it, and so you just react to the situation that you see. But yeah, I was definitely the drill sergeant dad for a long time, and it just wasn't me.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because my mom, I think she was single mom, working nights, and so my sister pretty much had to be kind of like the mom during the day. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting because they would just take off, and of course I was by myself most of the time, and it got to the point where my mom kind of did the same thing. She's like, I kind of tried to control your other kids, didn't really work, just all shit went to hell, and I just told her, I'm like, well, I'll always be the rational one. Let's sit down and talk. And I remember one day she was just yelling and screaming, and she had the wooden spoon that she would usually whip with, and she slams on the table and it breaks.
Did you start laughing?
I did. And I go, now that it's out of your system, do you want to talk about this? And she goes, I'm the adult, not you. And I'm like, yeah, but we're not getting anywhere with that. Yeah. So let's sit down and talk. And it's funny because I learned that rationale. I think I was 16-ish. And
nice.
And anytime I wanted something, I go, I'm just going to sit down and ask. And I learned from Mike Duncan, kind of a father figure from mine, is he told his kids, when you come ask me something, the answer is always no until he convinced me it's yes.
I did something along those lines,
and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So I did the same thing with mine. Kira hated it. She just wouldn't ask. She'd go to her mom. And then she would say, what did your dad say? And she's like, ugh, kind of thing. Yeah. But
when my kids were younger, they used to, whenever they'd start asking for something, I would interrupt them by saying no.
Yeah.
And then they'd say, but I haven't finished asking. I said, I just want you to get used to it.
Yeah, get used to it. And it's just interesting because it's eventually I was getting to the point, I'm like, okay, why are they not asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, am I being too rough? Kind of thing. And so like you, I probably when I started going to school, and I had to be more lenient because I didn't have as much time because I needed to do homework and stuff like that. And I was the parent that would let the kid make a huge mess, painting and stuff like that. But then I'm like, okay, now we gotta clean up. And I'm like, and they want to run off. I'm like, no, that's part of you make the mess. You got to clean it up. Yep. And so, we were getting notes from the daycares. It's like, oh my gosh, your kid is so nice. He picks up after himself and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, good. I'm glad he does it there too. Kind of thing. And it's funny because when I started dating, Amanda, and we were combining our family, it's her kids just, moms are slaves. Just they pick up after us. And they would just leave crap. They'd spill stuff and like, oh, I spilled. You're like, yeah, fucking pick it up. It's like, okay, go get a rag, get a towel, clean it up, kind of thing. And
I mean, I talk to clients about, take the burden off your shoulders as a parent. Put the onus on the kids.
Yeah.
Why, if the kid is 14, 15, 16 years old, why are you doing their laundry?
Yeah. I mean, I was doing, like you said, you were doing yours at 8, and I was doing mine at 8.
By 8 years old, I was doing my own. I mean, when growing up, we had 2 washers, 2 dryers, because there's 12 people in the house. But if we didn't do our laundry, it didn't get done.
Yeah, because you said that in like in episode 1. We were talking about that. And then I know with cell phones, we talked about me having a pager, and I had to call my mom back in a certain amount of time or I'd be grounded. Which really grounding was just I couldn't play Wing Commander on the computer. Because it's like I had 3 jobs, played sports. So I like maybe had an hour to myself ever during high school kind of thing. But it just, and most of the time I could get out of it, not in a bad way, like, hey, what other chores do you need done so I can get out of this? And they're like, oh yeah, clean the gutters. And I'm like, okay, I get gutters cleaned out, kind of thing. Kind of earn it out of it.
Occasionally I'd have my kids wash baseboards.
So what do you wash baseboards? And I'm like, I freaking do that anyway. What do you think the benefits of discipline are?
Well, as much as parents oftentimes want to be liked by their kids. Kids need to have a framework. They need to have structure.
Yeah. And
the discipline provides that structure. If you don't have discipline, you don't have a bedtime. You don't, like the whole grazing of little kids eating whenever they feel like it. What does that actually teach the kid?
Obesity.
Potentially, yeah. But it's like they can eat whenever they want to. They don't have to sit down. They don't have to, Well, there's a benefit to the structure because as a society, we have to have structure. It can fluctuate, it can adjust, all that kind of stuff, but it needs to start somewhere. And if the kids don't learn that early on, then when they go out and try and be adults, if they're even trying to be adults, all of a sudden it's like, well, why is the world so mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was one thing that I always...
Yeah, what's that thing where it's like, oh gosh, what is it called? Well, I don't feel like waking up at 8, and so if I come into work at 10 because that's when I woke up, then that should be okay. Yeah. Fuck that, no.
That's why they're having a lot of his generation. They're getting fired really quick because they don't have like that drive to work and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's just the school system's failing too. Because now they can turn in their assignments whenever they want. It can be 3 months late. Well, I didn't understand it. I need more time to cheat.
The school systems, they have to deal with the parents too. Yeah. So if a kid's failing and the parents blaming the teacher and the school for it, I can understand why the schools are adjusting to that kind of thing. I think they take it too far sometimes, but
they definitely do.
It goes back to that structure. Kids need structure. It is their security. If they don't like it, they're going to resist it because they don't want to go to bed at 9 o'clock. They want to keep watching TV. They want to keep playing with toys or video games or whatever. But they need to go to bed, and it actually helps them thrive. So I think there's a lot of parents that are scared of doing that because of the resistance they get.
Well, and I think a lot of times, like with Kira, when I went back to school, she's spent hours fighting me to do her homework, and it's not fair. Quinn's in playing his video games. I'm like, yeah, he came home, did his chores, and did his homework. In like literally 15 minutes, and I checked it. It's all right, so he can do what he wants.
Yeah,
and you're arguing about it. That when you look online, or basically when you look at what discipline, the benefits, it says that helps individuals achieve their goals, improves mental and physical health, which I definitely agree 100%. Watching my daughter go up and down through high school, being bullied and stuff like that, it definitely helps relationships down the road. I think it builds trust between the child and the parent. I think it also helps them know that they can count on their parent when they hold them to a standard, and they know the parent are going to hold themselves to the same standard. That's the key, the big one.
The consistency.
I do what I'm telling you, same thing,
or at least I'm trying to do what I'm also telling you. I mean, I've got a lot of debt from over the years, but I have tried to teach my kids not to make those mistakes, and they see the consequence that I'm trying to now struggle to pay off debt and all this other stuff. And so a lot of my kids have done really, really well, but I've never tried to pretend like, oh, see, I'm such a great financial wizard or anything like that. I know some stuff, but I've learned because of mistakes. don't make the same mistakes I have.
Well, and that's the whole point of parenting, right? Is you don't want them to go through what you went through and the lessons we learn, and we want to. Sometimes they think we're being mean, but it's like I just don't want you to make the same mistake I made, man. It sucked. It took me 10 years to recover from it, kind of thing. Yeah. And if you get it right the first time, you won't have to deal with that kind of thing. And and I think that my mom, she told me once, she goes, I'm not going to bail you out. I'm not going to get you out of trouble. Whatever you put yourself in, it's on you. So just think twice before you do it. And there'd be days we'd be out doing something stupid, and I'm like, this is illegal. We probably shouldn't do this. and thank God they didn't have video recorders and stuff back then.
Right.
To record us. And then we had the big cameras we'd carry around.
Yeah, it was obvious. It's not like somebody's cell phone covertly recording and then posting it online.
And the worst stuff we did would, put the mashed potato flakes in people's yards. And then so the yard become all mush and gross. And I learned down the road that sucks as a dad when you have your own yard. And I'm like, fuck, this sucks.
Sit out there with the hose.
But yeah, it's interesting. And when you look at, and you brought up a study just in conversation in the past about how when they did a study on single men raising their kids, single women raising their kids, and the family unit raising the kids. Tell us more about that.
So, and I can't remember where the study comes from off the top of my head, but they've been doing more research recently about the family dynamic because, back in the 60s, 70s, when they started a lot of the family research, there was a lot more of these families where the mom and the dad were both still in the home. It was a traditional home. And when there was divorces, oftentimes the kids went with the mom almost exclusively. So as times have changed and as men are starting to get more and more custody and things like that, they're now doing more research, and they're finding that when it comes to incarceration rates, graduation rates, going to college, teenage pregnancy, those kind of things, those kind of statistics, for single fathers who have custody of their kids, the statistics are on par with a home where both the mother and the father are in the home. When it comes to single mothers, and I've been a single dad. It's a struggle. I'm not downplaying single mother's role or anything like that because it's challenging no matter what the scenario is. But statistically, those rates of incarceration, not graduating high school, teenage pregnancy, all that kind of stuff, go up significantly when it's a single mother that has custody of her kids as opposed to a single father.
And when you've dated. Very little, but when you've dated out there,
I've dated. Shut up.
People with kids, have you seen that to be true? I mean, I definitely have. And the two women I've dated that had kids, I think they went to best friend mode, and they're great. Like, the kids loved them. They hang out. I mean, Harper would be so far up Amanda's ass that I thought they were one person, or basically she's taking a shit and.
Yeah, and of course that statistic does not it's not a blanket statement for all single mothers and all single fathers or anything like that, because there's a lot of different things that go into play with that. Is there a rotating men coming in or rotating women coming in? How soon are you introducing a boyfriend or girlfriend to the kids? If it's too soon, it can be a negative, but it's not. Hey, this is somebody that's really, really special, and it's the first time they've ever met somebody that soon. Is it happening all the time? Yeah. There are some people, they'll move in a partner like a month after they started dating. That's disruptive to the kids. The kids, what are they actually learning? What's the value of relationships, value of the parent's relationship with a kid if the parent is constantly pursuing somebody else and then is doing, being the neglectful or the permissive parent instead of taking on the role of a parent the way I think you're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting you bring that up because, I actually did date a gal that she kind of did that a lot, but in a weird way, it actually brought her closer to her kids because she got more disciplinary as the guys came in because they'd give her shit about it. Most of the time. And I know we talked about that in the after divorce kind of thing, how, I learned early on that you can't be the dad. It's I wanted to help replace, Cody because he was never in the picture and stuff like that. But later I learned that maybe it was her. that was creating his instability to be a dad. You know, it is crushing to go out of your way to make a home for your kids and everything, then they decide not to come, you know. And then, you know, it takes a lot in a man to just, okay, you know, they're teenagers, it's just how it is, you know, don't take it personal, they love me. Or you can be like, fuck them, bullshit, motherfucker, you know, kind of thing.
And at times it's both.
But, you know, it just takes, as a parent, like, you have to have the discipline to not be butthurt and then make your kids feel bad about it, because then they won't want to come see you. You know, it'll just create this long thing. And
one of the things that I've tried to do, I think I've talked to a couple of my kids about it, but I don't expect my kids to come and see me. So my kids, they're all grown. My youngest is in college. My oldest is, she's an RN. She, you know, lives in another state. I've got one in California, one in Utah, one in Ohio, and then 2 here in Missouri. But I don't demand or expect them to come and see me.
You're just sprinkling your seed all over the country.
Well, it's the way I grew up too. I got siblings all over the country as well. But, you know, if the Lennart gene lasts for many, many, many generations, cool.
The Irish are coming.
But and so instead of like me sitting at home and living my life, and then it's like, well, when are you going to come and see me? No, I want to go and see them. If I'm going to value those relationships and I want to continue those relationships and see grandkids and things like that, then I've got to make that a priority.
Yeah.
If you know, and if my hope is that, and I think this is happening, time will tell. The hope is that as my kids see me making that effort, that I prioritize my relationship with them, then they will value that and want to prioritize their relationship with me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the goal, right? You know, to find time and make it work for both.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing, instead of you come my way only kind of stuff. I mean, I think I learned that a lot when, you know, we moved to Baser, and it put this big gap between. It was just straining on my kids to get up at like 5:40 to go to school, and it was hard, you know, trying to make it work and stuff like that. But how did you feel about spanking?
So I used to spank my kids, actually.
Angry spanking or?
Most of the time it was the educational type,
okay.
You know, 1 or 2 swats, get your attention, now listen to me kind of thing. I stopped spanking my kids because I actually went overboard once, big time. And I've shared this with a couple of people. I guess people are going to hear this on the podcast, but there was one time where I have to acknowledge I think I was abusive, actually. And it was after I got back from Iraq. The family was sitting watching a movie, and my oldest daughter, her job was dishes, and so she was supposed to be doing dishes, and we're about an hour into the movie, and she had done like a plate because she kept coming in to try and watch the movie.
Yeah.
And so I was getting more and more angry, and this is in that, you know, drill sergeant phase kind of thing. And so I went into the kitchen, and then I can't remember what I said or what I asked, but you know, it's just like, why can't you just get the dishes done? You would have been done by now, kind of thing. And she had some smart remark back. You know, she was, I think, 14 at the time. It's about the right age.
14, okay.
And I just got angry. And so I, like, you know, 2 inches from her nose, screaming in her face like a drill sergeant, and spanked her a whole bunch of times. And I just got into this kind of rage that it lasted for about a half hour. And my wife at the time, like, took the other kids into another room. The other kids were scared. You know, my wife at the time was scared. And I remember about 10, 15 minutes into it or so thinking, why am I this angry? But I couldn't control it. And it's something that I have, you know, apologized to my kids for. At the time, I apologized. I broke down crying when I finally could, you know, when I finally got control of myself. Broke down crying, apologized to my kids. I swore I'd never spank any of them again. Never did. I yelled at them still periodically, but even that over time got less and less too. But that, I knew that was one that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And that actually started me going to therapy, because I was so shocked by my own behavior that I recognized I probably had PTSD.
Well, that's awesome, because I mean the great thing is you recognized it. I mean, there's people.
That's, I think, the awesome part.
Well, you recognize it, and you're like, I need to get help for this, because there are people that will try to justify it. They will go forward with it. They will push their boundaries, and you get to the point where the kid becomes more I don't want to say disobedient, but more rebellious.
Yeah.
To push back, and then you get this push-pull kind of thing, and you can get a kid that basically can either kill their parents,
on those occasions.
Yeah, because they're trying to protect themselves and kind of thing. And I kind of went through a similar thing. And it's like I would always take a second. I'd always tell my kids I'm putting myself in timeout, and they would just confuse them. They would get so angry that I'm like, I will kill you, kind of thing. And I always wanted like that thing that I did, like got my baseball and I'd, anger, something that I'd like to,
anger,
shit, Dad's
throw
pissed.
it into the glove.
Oh, crap, Dad's mad.
Go
upstairs. And I just, then, but it was really good because with Kira, your first one, you're learning and you're doing all this stuff. And I always tried to get on one knee. Okay, what did you do wrong? Why am I upset? What can you do differently? And people are like, oh, you can't rationalize with a 3-year-old. No, you can kind of. It's like you don't talk to them like they're an adult.
They have a level of understanding,
And I'd put them in the timeout, and the whole timeout, the minutes of their age. And if she came out of timeout, that's when she got one spanking. And then she'd go back in and start over. And I think I only had to spank her like 4 times maybe. There's one time she just kept coming out of timeout, and I'm just like, started kind of like you, getting a little angry and everything. She finally just goes, I just gotta really pee. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay, go pee. I'm sorry.
I'm such a bad dad.
She's like, I'm gonna pee my pants. I'm like, oh, crap. But Quinn, man, I got him so good. Like, not good. Like, I did it to him once, and he was so cute because, like, when he was in trouble, I could just do my dad voice. And you go, I'm putting myself in timeout. And he'd go in timeout. And there's that one time we were talking about how I was mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
And I put him in timeout. And they knew they could come out within the minutes of their age. So I think he was like 5. And I was like, hey, in 5 minutes you come out. I got the timer. Well, apparently I didn't hit start on the timer. And then I went out to mow the lawn.
Oh, no.
And Kira came out probably like 45 minutes later. He's like, Dad, can Quinn come out of timeout? Because he's just in here crying in the corner. I'm like, I felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh. Sorry, buddy. But the only time I really lost the same thing with Kira is, I don't remember what it was, but she was talking back and I was just screaming and just yelling at her and berating and I just remember just recognizing her just shaking and just like cowering down. And I'm like,
it feels so bad when you see
and
that
I go, why are you cowering down? She's like, I don't want you to hit me. I'm like, and it broke my heart. And I got on one knee and I go, Kira, I have never hit you except for spanked you. I've never, which I didn't do hard. Same. I just barely did it. I go, you don't have to worry about me ever hitting you. Now, I have done the whole thump on the head thing kind of stuff, and as they got older, I didn't do that
I would
anymore.
grab the ear sometimes when they wouldn't come with me. My mom did that to me. It would. I mean, the ear's not going to tear off. It's pretty stout, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, but it's interesting how you go down the line, and of course now, being 2 separate houses, you get to the point where I feel like I'm correcting all the time, with my kids when I see them, and I don't want it to be that way. It's like I don't want to be like correcting behavior because I don't see you as often.
Yeah, so I've had this theory about parenting and like the stages of kids' lives and what kind of discipline or parenting is best on that stage of life. When kids are when they're born, they're just piles of mush and they can't do anything for themselves. So you have to do everything. But by 2-3 years old, they can start being a little bit independent. So you start giving them choices, but you control the choices.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key right there.
Yeah, you can wear your pink shirt or you can wear your orange shirt, but you're wearing a shirt.
Yeah.
So they have a little bit of sense of choice, but you're really just directing everything.
Well, it's good because it's like, for anybody that has kids and they're trying to figure out how to get that control, there's the 2 things. Is one is, like you said, you control their choices. It's like, well, you're going to bed. Do you want to take your bath first, or do you want to change into your pajamas? And it's like, well, I'm going to take my bath first because it doesn't make sense to put my jammies on. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. We should do the bath first. And then you think they came up with that,
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea is you make them think like they're the ones doing it. But, once kids get to about, 8 or 9 years old, then they start questioning the, why.
Well, why?
And that's when I would start, go ahead.
No, and studies have showed that if you just say because, then the kids subconsciously learn not to come to you when they have questions about things because they'll go to other people.
Yeah, and so 8 or 9 years old-ish, that's when you start explaining why. You start teaching them the thought process behind why you're doing what you're doing, and you start giving them a few more choices. So you start teaching them how to think, right? Yeah. But it's still relatively controlled. You don't let them just go out with their friends until 2 o'clock in the morning. But once kids hit about 13, 12 to 14-ish, and it's getting a little bit younger now, but 12, 13, 14 years old or so, they start wanting to be independent. They they have this mindset that they're, I'm almost an adult, and so I should be able to do
Erickson's.
And so, at that point, if you've been a permissive parent where you've just kind of let your kids, and it's like, oh look, 6-year-olds are dating, that kind of thing. Well, by the time they're 14, 15 years old, and you're like, oh shit, they're going to be driving. There's some legal consequences coming, and you try and lock them down.
Yeah,
they're going to resist like crazy. It's too late.
Yeah,
it's too late. You can't just shut down everything they want to do when you've been allowing it that whole time. And so, part of this kind of theory behind the parenting is that by the time they're 14, 15 years old, you actually let them make some of those decisions, but you also let them experience some of the consequences.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Well, and so the idea at that point is, I'm trying to help you become an adult now so that when you are an adult and there's no safety net anymore, you know how to think through the decisions, you know how to take accountability for your life, and I can kind of sit back and just say, okay, I'm here for advice, I'm here for a shoulder to cry on, but by the time they're 18, 19 years old, if you're still telling them what to do and you're still trying to get them to go to bed on time and eat their vegetables and that kind of stuff, what are you doing as a parent at that point?
Yeah, seriously.
Do you really want to be doing that?
No.
No.
Eat your vegetables. No cookie for you.
And so when my kids, and that's what I did. I had that concept, as I raised my kids. And so as they've become adults and they start experiencing different things in life, they'll call me up and they say, hey, I really need some advice. This is going on. Da, 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 da. I'm like, oh man, that's really tough. And I'm really sorry. What kind of things are you thinking about doing? Well, have you thought about this? There might be this too, but you know what? You're a smart kid. I love you. I support you. If I can help, I will. But I've also raised my kids with the idea that I'm not going to enable them, and I've said that to them many times. I want to be a help. I don't want to enable.
Right.
And so sometimes when they ask for help, I say no.
Well, and it's funny because some parents too, like they bail them out nonstop. They do everything. My grandma, I guess, my Uncle Dwayne, he would tell her to fuck off. No, I'm doing my own homework. I'm doing my own thing. Because she would do all their homework, do everything. And I look at my dad compared to my Uncle Dwayne, who, had chiropractor, took over the practice, great job. My aunt, same thing. Or my dad just basically, I think he's in insurance, have no idea where he's at, no loyalty to family kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so you can tell the person that got spoiled, which I think that was more the permissive towards my dad. And then my uncle created the environment that was, I'm doing it myself, which then my grandma respected because she was so controlling. And when you break down the different parenting styles, you can see that with people's drives and how lazy they are, accountability, are they taking responsibility for, shit, I forgot to get that assignment done. And I made Kira. She's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, all you can do is message your professor and say, hey, this happened. Is there any way I can have an extension? And then you follow through kind of thing. And she hated it. I'm like, well, you learned, but now she's at college and she's, reached out and she learned how to do it.
Yeah. And, like you said earlier, the oldest one's the first one. That's when you kind of make a lot of mistakes with. And so for my oldest daughter, I'm really sorry. But I realized too that as my kids became teenagers and were in high school and stuff like that, me asking them, are you doing your homework? What are your grades? All that kind of stuff. One, you'd look at the grades online and they're like D's. Half the time it's because the teachers haven't put the grades in.
Yeah,
so it doesn't actually reflect anything. And so finally with my kids, I decided, you know what? You guys have to become adults in your life. And so if you're going to fail, you're going to fail.
Yeah, doors closed.
Yeah, I mean, they saw me in school because I went back to school after the military, so back in 2016, 15, whatever it was. And so I was in college and then in a master's program, working my butt off, getting A's and B's and, master's program. I had almost straight A's. And so I wasn't trying. I showed them, you can do this. You're all smart enough. But if you're gonna fail, okay, then I guess you don't graduate.
Yeah.
Thankfully, most of my kids, they actually did pretty darn well. And I also told my kids that don't expect me to pay for college. I don't make that kind of money. And so if you want to go to college, you've got to figure it out, whether it's scholarships, grants, loans, savings, whatever. And I've actually been really proud of my youngest daughter, who she's doing it on her own. She wants to. But she would do AP classes, she would do these advanced classes, and she got A's and B's in those classes, and I didn't say a word.
And it's all that white privilege.
That's but it was, she wanted to do it, and so my kids, when they were in like middle school, they were invited into that PEAK program, whatever, for smart kids. Yeah. I actually didn't enroll them. I didn't put them in it.
Oh, really?
Nope. I didn't do it because I didn't want them to get that added stress of more homework and all this other stuff at that age yet. And for those who do, I'm not criticizing. It's just what I decided. But when they got into high school, they still had that confidence of good grades. Because if you're in PEAK and you're getting C's, but that's an advanced class and you're actually really one of the smarter kids, but you don't feel like it anymore, it can be demoralizing.
Yeah. And
so when they started going to school, and one of my kids was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do AP Calculus." I'm like, "Wow, really?" And like, yeah, I was like, "You sure you want to?" It's your senior year. You can kind of take some blow-off classes. No, I like it. Oh, all right, cool.
And then you're like, yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In the background, I'm like, oh, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, it's pretty funny on that part of it. It turned out pretty good. And, it's amazing how you can feel like you're screwing up. And that's kind of the philosophy of it.
Dude, all
as
the
a parent,
time.
If you're not questioning how you're parenting and you feel like you're failing, that usually means you're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
As the parents are like, "Oh, I'm great, man. My kids are awesome." Then I'm like, they're probably assholes, and kind of thing. But
yeah, well, I was talking to one of my clients this week, and he was talking about some mistakes that he's made where he feels bad and stuff. And here's the other part about parenting: you've got to allow yourself some grace.
Yeah,
there is no perfect parent. Everybody screws up. Everybody yells at their kid. Everybody's spanked their kid or something, because you're just pissed off about something that's totally unrelated. You're not a bad parent because of it. As long as you recognize it and you're trying to do better and you're trying to grow, that's called good parenting.
Well, and it's great that you brought up therapy. And, if you're finding you're struggling with it as a single dad or mom, it's okay to reach out and ask for advice and stuff like that. Because there are things, and, when I went back to nursing school, it was awesome to be going through child development. I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm actually a good dad.
Right?
This is really cool. I'm actually doing it right, kind of thing. And then you learn about Erickson's and how that plays into our psyche and growing up, and it really kind of helps you as an adult understand. And if you don't know Erickson's levels of development as a person, it's a great thing to learn and read. Mm-hmm. As an adult, and you have kids going into the teen years, I mean, it's a great thing to understand because you won't be as butthurt. You'll understand why they want to be needed and liked and get all those follows and stuff like that. But social media, oh my God, that stuff, man.
As we're doing a podcast on
social media. But it's we're trying to reach people that are single dads or divorced or have gone through what we've gone through, and I'm definitely not perfect, and I've told my kids, sorry, I could have done better. I could have been great. And they're like, no, man, you were great.
I'm a huge proponent of apologizing.
Yeah.
If I recognize I'm wrong or if somebody points out that I'm wrong, I don't want to be such a prideful motherfucker that I'm like, I'm the dad, I don't have to. No, that's being an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be an asshole to my kids.
Well,
or my grandkids.
And I will flat out say I appreciate every woman I ever dated when it came to kids, because somewhere along the line, one of them kind of pointed out something, and I learned how to be a better father due to something they pointed out, and I'm grateful for those experiences because I think it's definitely made me better as a parent. Discipline.
One of the interesting things that I learned from actually my mother. Shout out to my mom; she's an amazing person. My dad is too. But when we were kids, there's 10 of us, right?
Yeah.
She got laryngitis. She lost her voice, and so we're like TV. We're all running around doing all our things, and because she lost her voice, she couldn't speak loudly And so she was whispering, and she's shared this where all of a sudden she started recognizing that we would quiet down and listen to try and understand her. She's admitted that she continued that even after she got her voice back.
Yeah.
But what I learned from that too, like with my kids when they were teenagers and stuff, they got scared more when I was quiet than when I was yelling. I didn't yell a whole lot as they got older, but yeah, when they were in trouble and when I was upset enough that I'm like, you know what? No, you guys keep watching TV. Keep on doing what you need to do. I'll take care of it. You guys don't worry about the dishes. I'll wash it. Yeah. And they're like, no, we'll do it.
The mom style.
But yeah, they knew that at that point I was really, really pissed. But it wasn't the yelling, screaming, or anything like that. It was, no, I'll take care of it. You guys are fine. No, you're fine. It's all good.
What's the most drastic punishment you ever did?
Besides when you kind of went off on my daughter inappropriately. Yeah. Okay. So, most drastic punishment. I did wall sits.
Oh, wall sits. Okay.
Yeah. So where my kids would have to sit against the wall with their thighs parallel to the ground.
Oh, jeez.
And they'd put their arms out in front of them, and they could not let their arms go down. I would do it with them too sometimes, but that was one where it would burn. I'm like, look, you're either going to learn or you're going to get strong. But one of the two is going to happen. And, there were times where it almost became comical.
Yeah.
But, no, that was – my kids are pretty strong.
Mine was the toys. Like, they usually at the end of the day, we made them pick up their toys and then bath and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And they just wouldn't do it. Like, they were just like, laughing and running around and just, like, so many toys. And so they went to bed and didn't do it. So – Santa Claus came back and took all the toys. and luckily it was November, so they literally didn't have any toys. And that year for Christmas, they got their toys back.
That was their Christmas present. They just got their toys back.
They got more down the road. But,
okay,
but they're like, "Oh shit, let me lose our toys." But then Kira down the road said, "Wow, we just learned that Santa Claus would bring our toys back." And I'm like, "God damn it,
fuck." No, when my kids were younger, my first house. So we had 3 kids at the time, but we had a 4-bedroom house, and so we had a playroom. One of the bedrooms we turned into a playroom. And there was one time, I think my wife at the time and I were talking about something. We'd sent my oldest daughter up to the playroom because she was just kind of in the middle of everything, and she came out like 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, and she's like, "I'm bored." And it was a room full of toys.
Yeah, that drove me nuts.
Yeah, and I went, "Oh. You're bored with all these toys? We got a huge playroom. You can do whatever you want here, all that kind of stuff. You're bored? Okay, pick your 2 favorite toys." And I had my other kids pick their 2 favorite toys, and everything else went into a trash bag. And we had a 2-car garage separated with like a full space above it, full floor above it.
Yeah.
And so I took all of their extra toys besides the 2, and I put them in we called it the barn, put them up in the barn. And then every 2-3 months, I mean, they would get a couple more things. We go to McDonald's and they get a little McDonald's toy, or we'd get some, But so every couple months, they would go barn shopping.
Nice.
And so they would gather up all their toys, and we'd go up to the barn, and they would have to put their current toys into the bags, but they could pick, let's say 3 or 4 toys out of the toys that are there, and they got excited. It was great. It ended up being wonderful, where they would go. Yeah, they'd go, "Oh, I remember this toy," that kind of thing. And what it did is it decluttered the house, first of all. But, they valued the toys more because there wasn't just this huge abundance of toys. I also didn't have, like, these shelves where it was like, put the Legos here and the cars here and the Barbies there.
Yeah, we tried that, didn't we?
No. We had a big Rubbermaid tub, and it was like, when they wanted to play, dump it on the floor. They could go through whatever, and then it made cleaning up easy because it's just gathered all up into one thing. So.
Yeah, we'd go through those phases where we're like, oh, okay, it's donate your toy day kind of thing, and they'd take their time and they'd pick which toys they didn't want anymore, and we'd take it to the Salvation Army and stuff, which is kind of cool. But
really, it's teaching boundaries.
Well, it really is. I mean, the whole point of discipline is you're learning how to ideally deal with other people in society and have the boundaries of respect. Mm-hmm. Respect the law, respect themselves, respect your elders, all that stuff. So if you look at the Chinese educational system, they don't learn anything education-wise. They just, for the first, I think, 6-7 years, they literally just focus on environment, living the environment, respecting your elders, and respecting yourself.
Yeah, very cultural.
And that's why every person I've ever met from China are very respectful.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the problems with the permissive or the neglectful parent is that there are no boundaries that you're ever teaching your kid. How are they supposed to respect themselves or respect others, you know?
Yeah, I saw that with my friend Chandler. Like, his parents were very, very lax. I mean, almost to the neglectful. And he just would do whatever the fuck he wanted. And if he, like, when he rolled my car, like, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then the next day, the parents were like, well, we shouldn't have to pay for it because you allowed him to drive the car. And I'm like, well, one, it's a $700 car. I can pay $700. And then two, he wrecked my car.
Yeah. Where's the accountability?
What are you teaching him, you know, by not doing that? Now, he actually paid me himself under the table because he was so scared his parents would find out. And he'd get punished if he did, kind of thing.
How fucked up is that?
Yeah, well, he also had a stepdad.
My kid wrecks somebody else's car. I say, we're not responsible. And then my kid is so scared of me that they don't tell me that they pay for the car over time or whatever. But, what? Ah, man.
Well, and out of respect,
I'm going to say this.
Friendship.
That's not good parenting.
Oh, and here's this kid now that he's had, I think, 4 or 5 motorcycle accidents, has brain damage. All he can say now, I mean, he's so liberal now, but if you say anything conservative, he's like, oh, you're a fucking Nazi. You're a Nazi. You're a Nazi. You know, it's just like, dude, Chandler, chill. It's like, calm down. And it's just like, he has no concept of.
Well, and another thing that the boundaries do, I think, you know, teaching kids, having discipline, having structure, all that kind of stuff. But here's another example of what I did with my kids. They didn't have to share their toys. So, like, if you know, let's say my middle daughter was playing with something and her sister grabbed one of her other toys and she got mad, I wasn't the parent that was like, oh, just let them play with it. It's not a big deal. No, it's to the one who grabbed the toy. That's not your toy. You have to ask.
Yeah.
And then so I would teach them to ask. But I also told, you know, the daughter whose toy it was or the kid whose toy it was, you don't have to say yes. You can say no. But think about in the future if you want to play with one of your toys, you know. But I wanted them to have that autonomy and have that, you know, mutual respect for one another. You know, honestly, I think it's kind of like I don't know if you've ever heard of Brene Brown. So she's like a researcher. She does a lot of like psychology and mental health and all that kind of stuff. But she one time gave an interview about boundaries, and I liked the way that she said it. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember exactly. But basically, it's, you know, we have boundaries to show people that we love ourselves by having these boundaries. I respect myself. I love myself too much to let you walk all over my boundaries, and so I'm going to hold these boundaries. And they're healthy boundaries, not healthy boundaries, and all that kind of stuff. But with teaching boundaries to our kids by having that structure, having that discipline for ourselves as well as parents, it allows us that space to be able to say, you know, I love you enough to say no.
Yeah.
I love you enough to put up with you being mad at me because I know it's better for you.
Yeah, and it's the pain of, I love you so much that I want you to learn this, and I know you're going to hate me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the one great thing is my kids have never said, I hate you.
A couple might have.
I wish they were in my life. So I feel like you succeed when you do that because it means you discipline in a way that wasn't so bad, you know. And there's times that I think Kira wanted to say it, but like stopped herself. And, you know, Quinn's flexed before, and I just looked at him. I'm like, I will fucking knock you down. I go, we're not doing that. I go, and eventually you'll be able to kick my ass, but hopefully you'll have enough respect for me as your father that you won't lose your temper like that. And actually, going to the temper part, that's the big one with like video games and stuff like that. And I remember growing up, I lose my, you know, I get pissed I can't get past this level, and I throw the remote. And what happens when we throw the remote? It breaks, and we go, fuck, I gotta buy a new remote. And you're like, God damn it. And then you feel stupid and shy. And that's the kind of things, you know, you want to make sure your kid feels guilt when they do something bad like that, and that they learn to not do it. And I've told them, like, dude, step away. Take a deep breath. Like, it's just a fucking game.
There's actually an experience I had with my son that I think illustrates it very well. When, you know, as far as being able to have that structure, that discipline to show love. And I think you were there when we were down at Lake of the Ozarks.
Oh yeah.
And all the teenagers were out on the pontoon boat, just on the dock, and they like the parents. The conversation was not going the right direction. They were talking about some not so great stuff, and so as parents, we were like, all right, time to come in. Da, da, da. My son was like 17, and he's like, I'm almost an adult. I don't have to go in, kind of thing. Well, he was like trying to be cool to everybody around. So after the lake. It was a few weeks later, I think, but he and we got in this argument. He was really angry about something and all this, and I brought up how embarrassed I was and how much it hurt me that he had done that. And I said, look, I know that you're pissed off about the divorce. I know you're pissed off because you want to be adult, all this other stuff. And I said, and I take it. I don't respond typically. I don't get angry. I don't do all this stuff, and I take it because I know you need me to, because you're angry and you're trying to just vent. But it hurts every single time. And like I broke down crying and he broke down crying. It became a really, poignant moment for the two of us, and he, wrapped me up in his arms kind of thing. But it was one of those things where it's like I think he recognized that I was not just reacting to him.
Yeah.
I was holding boundaries and I was doing that for his benefit. And in that moment, he realized it. And he and I we butted heads a lot. He's a lot like me. But as he's become an adult and as he started having kids and getting into a career, he's a firefighter, he now sees the things that we went through as his dad, that he's a dad too. And, without that structure, without having gone through all those experiences, honestly, I don't know that he'd be the man that he is.
Well, I think that at the lake too, you're like, no. And then all of the adults purposely went, ooh. It may have made it a little worse for him, but it's like the boundaries you teach them. Right. And I had to go through that lesson with Kira too. Like I told her, I'm like, you disrespect me, and I'll never embarrass you in front of your friends unless you embarrass yourself first by disrespecting me.
Yeah.
And I pulled her into a closet once with her friends there, and I'm like, Kate, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Let's discuss this. They need to go home. We're not doing a sleepover. It's no fair. It's no fair. And just like rounds and rounds and rounds. And then she broke the rule and started arguing in front of her friends with me. And I'm like, okay, you guys are all fucking going home. Took him home. I'm like, and that really goes to the other thing, the boundaries and follow through. Like when you set the boundaries as a parent, you have to fucking follow through.
That is essential because as soon as the kids learn that you're going to give, they're going to constantly try and get you to give.
So don't say, I'm going to take your laptop away if you do this again, and then they do it again.
And you don't take the laptop away.
And they're like, oh, cool, I can push boundaries. And that's key. I think that's where parents lose the disciplinal line with their kids, and then the kids start push the boundaries beyond what they should be able to. And I think that's the important lesson is keep those boundaries. We do it for love. We want to keep them safe. We don't want them to go through the trials and tribulations that we had to. And they will. They'll do their own.
Of course
they'll
they will.
fuck up their own way. And we just always want them to know we're there for them, and that's the key on doing that. So,
but we're parents first. I've said that to my kids. I want to be friends with you, but first I'm your dad.
Yeah.
And so you're not always going to like me. But now, and now that all my kids are adults, I'm very, very grateful. I've got amazing relationships with my kids.
That's good.
In spite of my shit.
In spite of me screwing up all the time.
But, it's challenging. Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Give yourself some grace.
Thanks for joining us. I hope you guys liked our topic today. I know it's kind of a hard one, and like I said, reach out if you're a parent that's struggling with discipline with your kids. There's places like BetterHelp and they can get advice. Reach out and read that Erickson's development stages. It definitely will give you some insight.
As a therapist, I'm a little biased, but one of the things that it's important though is that you are comfortable with your therapist. If you don't feel comfortable, go find another one.
Yeah, you're not stuck with them. Join us next week when we talk about books. We really want to talk about like the banded books, how society's really taken good authors and destroyed why we can read them that could really help kids grow, the advantages of readings, and then like how comics coming into play and actually how they really helped young generations grow.
Are comics really reading?
Yeah, it's graphic novels. Remember, this is for our entertainment purposes only. We just have fun with it, kind of venting. But if you benefit from it, we appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as us.
Yep. And visit our website to become an exclusive member for behind-the-scenes content and discounts on merchandise. Sometimes there are outtakes or other things that you're not going to hear just through the podcast. You're only going to find through the website and through that access. But don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And
Wait till you add that shit.
Whoop.